I was 19 that year, a college freshman, sitting at the very back of our first mandatory class when I met Lucas Trent. People often say that whoever you sit next to during your first year won't end up being your person, because you see each other's flaws too early. But I was drawn to someone like him, quiet, reserved, tall, with eyes that always seemed lost in some distant thought. At first, I thought I'd met someone serious, but it turned out he was just good at hiding how careless he could be. It started with a few study questions, then we got grouped together for a project, and somehow our study sessions kept ending up as just the two of us. Lucas never took the initiative, but he never turned me away either. He accepted my attention so calmly, as if it was something he was supposed to receive from the start. One time I asked him if he had a girlfriend. He smiled and asked in return, "Do I seem like the kind of guy who would?" I took that as a no. But looking back, maybe it was just a way of dodging the question. We never officially dated, but I couldn't say there was nothing between us. The late-night meals, the times he waited outside my dorm without ever explaining why, the way his voice softened when we sat in silence, I remember it all so clearly. I painted this vague idea of love in my head, but I never once asked, "Do you like me?" Because deep down, I was scared. I was afraid that once I asked, I wouldn't be able to stay close to him like that anymore. Then came Sophie Carter, a sophomore in the business department, known for her beauty, charm, and grace. She joined the school's media team, outgoing and eloquent, everyone liked her. I didn't think much of it until I saw her comment under a photo Lucas posted. It was a picture of a rainy sky, no people, just clouds, and a caption that read, "Sometimes silence is the easiest way to breathe." Sophie commented, "You're always so quiet, I can never guess what you're thinking." But I like that. I smiled when I read it, thinking she was probably just teasing. But a week later, Lucas started replying to my texts differently. No more full sentences, just one-word answers like HM or yeah. I texted to ask if he wanted lunch or what we'd be studying tomorrow, and he'd barely reply. One day, I waited for him outside campus. He messaged saying he was busy with a group project. An hour later, I saw him walk past a bubble tea shop with Sophie. They weren't walking too closely. They weren't holding hands or doing anything inappropriate. But the way he looked at her, that wasn't how someone looked at a group partner. I didn't confront him. I just asked, "Is there something you're not telling me?" He frowned and replied, "And what exactly do you think you are to me that I need to explain anything?" I never forgot that line. It hit me so hard I literally took a step back. That was the first time I realized just how low I had placed myself. But sadly, I didn't walk away then. I stayed. I kept believing that if I just held on, he wouldn't let go. The mistake started the moment I believed that loving someone enough could change their heart. After Lucas Trent asked me that question, I went silent for nearly a week. No texts, no calls, no waiting for him in the hallway between classes. I went to lectures on time, left on time, focused on my assignments, and forced my eyes not to drift toward him, though sometimes they did without me realizing. I thought I was calming down, until I overheard a girl in class say that Sophie Carter had been chosen to join Lucas's project group, and that the two of them were heading out of town for fieldwork together for 2 full days. That's when I realized I'd never really let go. I didn't ask a thing. Not a single word. But it felt like someone had poured a bucket of ice water over my chest. I was there during the group meeting when it happened. I knew for a fact Sophie's name wasn't on the original list. But she'd asked to switch groups, saying she wanted to learn more from upperclassmen. And just like that, what a coincidence, the professor approved. Lucas didn't object either. That night, I saw his chat avatar online the entire time. Status, active. Getting likes, staying quiet. I typed and erased messages over and over until I finally sent just one line. "Good luck with the project." He didn't reply. When they returned, the entire department was buzzing about how successful the field trip had been. I was in the library, sitting in a far corner, when I overheard some girls talking. They said Sophie was so smart and sweet, how everyone adored her. One of them laughed and said she really knew how to pick her moment. Sometimes, you don't need to do much to take someone else's place. Just show up at the right time. I wasn't even sure they were talking about me. But somehow, my chest tightened with dread. It felt like someone had quietly stepped into his world and was slowly clearing me out of it. That night, I ran into him on campus. Not planned, not intentional. I was standing by the water fountain when he passed by. He saw me and gave a small nod. I nodded back. It was eerily quiet between us. As I turned to leave, he suddenly called out, softly, almost hesitantly. "Taylor." I stopped and turned back. He looked at me for a long time, then asked in a flat voice, "Are you mad at me?" I didn't answer right away. I looked at him carefully. Then I asked gently, "Do I even have the right to be mad?" He didn't say anything. I nodded, smiled faintly. "Okay then. There's nothing more to say. I understand." I turned around and walked away. But my chest felt heavier than ever. Because in that moment, I knew. If I didn't even have the right to be mad, then I no longer had the right to stay, either. Love without a name, without a place. It can't be called heartbreak. It's just something you volunteered to suffer through. But I wasn't going to volunteer again. Not this time. After that night, Lucas never messaged me again. And I didn't wait for him. I slowly taught myself not to glance at the clock during those hours when I used to expect a text. Not to check for updates from an account that hadn't lit up for me in a long time. I started to change. But life's funny like that. Just when you begin to accept things, the very thing you tried so hard to forget shows up again. It started with the final group presentation of the semester. The class got divided into teams. My group had nothing to do with Lucas Trent's team. But somehow, on the day of the final presentation, Sophie Carter walked on stage with him. She introduced herself to the class, saying that since Lucas's group was short a member, she had volunteered to help her upperclassmen complete the presentation. The class clapped. I sat in the audience, heart tightening just a little. Sophie stood beside him so naturally. She passed him the slides, he presented. His voice was calm and steady as always, but his gaze softened when it landed on her, lingering just a little longer than it should have. After class ended, I was gathering my things when I overheard some classmates laughing and chatting. "Lucas and Sophie look great together, such a shame they're not official yet." One of them added, "I used to think he liked some girl from the media club, but I guess she couldn't keep up with him." I didn't turn around. I didn't say anything. But inside, something began to freeze over. Every word felt like someone peeling back the truth I had desperately tried to hide from myself. That afternoon, I was unexpectedly called into the Student Affairs office to sign a form confirming my participation in the school's festival planning committee. I hadn't signed up, yet somehow my name was on the list. The staff member said some sophomore had nominated me, thinking I was responsible and always willing to help. I gave a small smile. That sophomore, of course, was Sophie Carter. She did everything with such grace, not a single misstep. To my face, she politely called me senior. But behind the scenes, she was steadily removing me from every space where I might cross paths with Lucas Trent. I wasn't naive. I saw what she was doing. I had just always believed, if I didn't fight, no one could take what wasn't being fought for. But now I knew. If you don't fight, you just lose faster. That night, I stepped out of the auditorium after a long meeting and saw Lucas standing in the hallway. For the first time in weeks, he came to me on his own. He said, "Want to grab dinner tonight?" I looked up at him. The lights above reflected off the glass between us, blurring his face slightly. His voice was still as gentle as I remembered. I almost nodded. But then I remembered Sophie standing beside him that morning. I remembered the text. "What do you think you are to me that I should tell you?" I remembered how many nights I cried silently because of him. And so, I shook my head. It's too late. I've got other plans. I turned around and walked away, not waiting for him to say anything. I wasn't even sure if I still loved him. But I knew one thing for sure. I no longer wanted to return to the place where I had once been left waiting. Well, he never even looked back. Because love has no benchwarmers. Only people who get replaced. And I had been replaced for far too long. I ran into Sophie Carter again. In the campus cafeteria. One cloudy noon, just before the drizzle began. She sat at the table across from me. When she saw me, she smiled immediately, stood up to grab me a new set of utensils, and even ordered bubble tea for me before I had a chance to speak. Everything she did was timed perfectly, done just right. Exactly the way a sweet, friendly, and seemingly harmless younger girl would behave. I looked at her for a few seconds, and suddenly, I just felt tired. Not tired out of anger, but tired because I knew her type too well. Sophie Carter sat back down, her eyes wide and sparkling as she looked at me. Taylor, you've been so busy lately. I messaged you, but you didn't reply. I thought maybe you were upset with me. I smiled, picked up the bubble tea, but didn't drink it. My gaze stayed locked on hers. I'm not mad, Sophie. But I think, you know exactly why I didn't reply. Her expression froze for just a second, then she smiled like nothing had happened. Did I do something wrong? Maybe you misunderstood me? I didn't respond right away. Instead, I asked softly. When you messaged Lucas for his birthday before I did. When you asked to switch groups just to work on the project with him. When you nominated me for the school festival planning team. Just so I'd be pulled out of the media club. Was there something you misunderstood about me? Her smile faltered. She nervously spun her drink between her fingers. I just thought you were talented. I figured you should get more spotlight. You shouldn't stay behind the scenes all the time. Behind the scenes? I cut her off, my voice still calm but noticeably colder. Sophie, don't pretend to be the one who came after, when you were the one who opened the door and walked in. Her face paled slightly. I kept looking at her, not to accuse, not to provoke. But every word I spoke cut deep. You said I was capable, but you quietly pushed me out of anything that involved Lucas. You said I deserved attention, but you were the one spreading rumors that I used to crush on him and now won't let go. You said I misunderstood, but between the two of us, I don't think I'm the one who's ever been unclear. Sophie bit her lip. The mask of innocence she always wore had cracked. She lowered her head, pretending to wipe a water ring off the table. But I could tell, she was shaking. And it wasn't because I was angry. It was because she never expected me to see everything so clearly. I stood up and picked up my bag. I don't need an apology, and I don't need an explanation. I just want you to remember, things gained through manipulation don't last long. I walked away without looking back. I knew behind me was a face drained of color. The face of someone who thought she had been acting flawlessly. And I also knew. This was only the beginning. I didn't expose everything I knew. Not because I'm kind. But because I don't need to call someone out just to prove I've been hurt. I just wait. They always reveal themselves eventually. There was a time when I thought. Even if I wasn't Lucas Trent's official girlfriend. At least I was the one he trusted most out of everyone who stood beside him. We had too many shared memories, too many quiet moments no one else could interfere with. We once walked in the rain together, without saying a word. We once spent hours in the library, just sharing a single pair of earbuds, listening to an old song together. He never held my hand. He never called me his girlfriend. But he never pushed me out of his world either. I thought that was his unspoken way of acknowledging us. Turns out, it was just something I made up in my head. Everything came crashing down during the end of semester party. The whole class went out to eat at a restaurant near campus. I hadn't planned to go, but my best friend insisted, so I eventually gave in. The moment I walked in, I saw Lucas Trent sitting next to Sophie Carter. She wore a white dress, light makeup, her smile bright as ever while he picked food for her. People around them laughed and teased. Someone even shouted, "Come on, kiss already." I was about to walk away, but right then, someone called out, "Hey, Taylor's here. Come sit with us." Reluctantly, I walked over. No one left the seat next to Lucas open for me. I sat across from them, watching someone else play the lead role in a story I once thought I had written the prologue for. A little while later, someone joked, "So, Lucas, what's the deal with you and Sophie? Are you two official now?" He didn't even look up. Just smiled and said, "Is there even a need to hide it anymore?" I sat in silence. My ears rang, not because of the words, but because of how easily he said them, like I had never existed. The same person who once said, "You're overthinking things," now said, "Why hide anymore?" Everyone around us clapped and cheered. Some laughed, others pulled out their phones to record and post on stories. And me? I didn't even know what the right reaction was anymore. To smile would feel fake. To stay silent would seem weak. So I took a sip of water, stood up quietly. No one noticed. No one stopped me. On the way out, only my best friend ran after me. She said, "Taylor, if it hurts, say something. Don't keep it in. You never did anything wrong." I shook my head. It doesn't hurt anymore. I just feel embarrassed. Because I thought I was someone special. Turns out, I was just extra. I started deleting everything. Photos, texts, chat history, even the songs I saved just because I once heard him humming them. I didn't cry. I didn't feel pain. It just felt like cleaning out a flooded room after a heavy storm. The walls had absorbed too much water. The furniture had started to mold. There was no point staying anymore. I left the department's media team, the place where he and I used to work side by side. Ever since Sophie joined, I'd always been scheduled to work opposite shifts or pushed into background tasks no one noticed. I left the study group, too. No explanations. Just one message. "Thank you, everyone." People said I'd changed. They weren't wrong. But they didn't know. I was just becoming myself again. After all that time of trying, waiting, being patient with someone who never intended to hold on to me, I began to read more. I went to class on time. Came straight back to the dorm after. I stopped wearing makeup. Stopped trying to be cute. Stopped laughing at things that weren't even funny. And just when I had finally stopped caring, Lucas Trent started texting me again. The first message was short. "Hey, are you doing okay?" I didn't reply. The second came a few days later. "Didn't see you at today's meeting." Still, no response from me. The third. "Taylor, I want to see you." It came in close to midnight. I wasn't asleep. Not because I couldn't sleep. Just because I didn't feel like it. I stared at the message, read it over and over. My hands didn't tremble. My heart didn't race. I just felt hollow. Some words, if they arrive at the right time, can be gentle. But if they come too late, they're just a slap to someone who's already let go. I locked my phone. Didn't reply. Because I knew, if I answered, he'd step back into my life. Not as someone who loved me, but as someone who simply couldn't bear losing something he once had. But I'm no longer that girl who would run after someone constantly walking away. Not because I became stronger, but because I couldn't stay weak for someone who never once slowed down for me. Because this time I saved myself. Before waiting for someone to come back and pull me out of pain they caused. I had already chosen to move forward. That week, I was selected to represent our class at a university public speaking event. The event was held in the main auditorium, with over 300 students attending. I stepped onto the stage in a white blazer, hair tied up high, no heavy lipstick, no forced smiles to look polite or agreeable. I hadn't planned to impress anyone. But by the end of my speech, the entire room burst into applause. I knew, somewhere in the third row, someone was staring at me. Not with admiration, but because he couldn't recognize me anymore. Lucas Trent was still sitting next to Sophie Carter. She wore a floral dress, hands wrapped tightly around his, as if she were afraid the world wouldn't notice they were together. But his eyes? They weren't on her anymore. That look. I knew it. It was the look I had waited for all year. The one he never gave me. When the event ended, I was heading straight for the exit. Until someone called my name loudly from behind. Taylor. I stopped for a few seconds. The voice wasn't loud, but in the middle of the crowd, it cut right through the noise. I turned around. It was Lucas. He stood there, phone in one hand, the other stuffed in his pocket. His face looked lost, like he wasn't even sure he still had the right to say my name. I gave him a short, cold look. What is it? He started to take a step forward. But before he could, Sophie appeared, catching up behind him, holding on to his arm. She smiled and called my name with that same fake familiarity as always. Taylor, you look amazing today. I almost didn't recognize you. I didn't respond. My eyes stayed on Lucas. I spoke slowly, my voice wasn't loud, but it was just loud enough for both of them to hear. Back then, when you walked beside her across campus, someone asked you about it, and you pretended not to hear. When she stood behind you in group photos, you never turned around. When she called your name during meetings, you said you were too focused on your presentation. I stepped forward, standing tall, just a little closer now. And now, you're calling my name in front of a crowd. Am I supposed to be impressed? Lucas's face stiffened. Sophie stood frozen beside him. I turned and walked away. Didn't look back. But I knew, both of them stood there, silent for a long time. I wasn't seeking revenge. I was simply giving them back exactly what they once gave me. In the calmest, most decisive, and most dignified way I could. The first time Lucas stood in front of my dorm was on a Saturday night, under a light rain. He called. I didn't pick up. He texted. Can we talk for a moment? I read the message, set my phone down, and kept folding my laundry. No more racing heartbeat. No more confusion. Just silence, like he was a page I had closed a long time ago. 15 minutes later, my roommate called me outside. I looked down and saw Lucas standing there. Soaked. I didn't ask anything. I closed my closet door, grabbed an umbrella, and walked downstairs. He stood beneath the streetlight, completely drenched. His eyes were red, whether from rain or regret, I couldn't tell. When he saw me, he stepped forward, then hesitated, not coming closer. Taylor. I'm sorry. I nodded. I know I messed up. I shouldn't have let you go. And I shouldn't have let Sophie come between us. I smiled, not bitterly, not sadly. Just lightly. Like we were talking about someone else's story. No one can come between something that's held tightly. You let go. So don't blame anyone else for taking it. He froze. I didn't give him the chance to say more. Instead, I asked just one thing. What do you want now? He looked up. I want to come back. I finally realized, you're the only one who truly understood me. I shook my head gently. There was a time I wished you'd hold on to me. But now, I don't need that anymore. And right then, a voice called from behind. Taylor, you forgot your wallet. I turned around. It was Michael, an upperclassman I had worked with on a research project for the department. He jogged up, holding my wallet and a small paper bag. His expression was calm, but his eyes held quiet concern. Clear. Certain. Present. I took the wallet from Michael, smiled, and turned to Lucas. I have plans. You should go, standing in the rain like this, you'll catch a cold. Then I walked away, leaving behind two men. One was someone who never knew how to cherish me. The other, someone who had just started seeing me with the respect I had always deserved. I didn't choose revenge. I chose to live better. And sometimes, living well is the quietest and most expensive form of revenge. From that day on, Michael started appearing in my life in the most natural way. No pushing. No chasing. No trying to force his way in. He was simply there. Just close enough to bring a sense of comfort. Just far enough not to suffocate me. He would send me useful resources for our research, recommend good restaurants near my dorm. One day, when it suddenly started raining and I hadn't made it back yet, he texted me. I'm at the dorm gate. Don't worry. I figured you didn't bring an umbrella when the wind picked up. I used to think the person who came later would always just be a replacement. But Michael wasn't trying to replace anyone. He never asked about Lucas. Never touched the wounds I kept hidden. He didn't try to fix me. He didn't try to win me over. He just quietly stayed. Like a soft place to rest if I ever got tired. I didn't know what that feeling was called. It wasn't love. It wasn't infatuation. It was just peace. Sophie Carter started getting uneasy. I overheard her one day while walking past the study lounge. She was on the phone with someone, her voice raised in frustration. Is she trying to seduce another guy now? Or is this the whole silent and graceful act to look noble? I didn't turn around. There was no need. People who are truly competent don't worry about being replaced. But those who win something by manipulation are always afraid of losing it. That night, Lucas Trent messaged me. I messed up. Can you give me a chance to start over? I didn't reply. Because I never really had a proper beginning with him. And more importantly, I didn't need to go back to a place where I had to try so hard, just to stay still. That week, the school held a major academic conference. Outstanding students selected to present were featured on the university's official page. Under the post, there were over 300 comments. Among them, one short comment stood out. From Lucas Trent. You don't need to please anyone. You don't need to shrink yourself to keep someone who was never genuine. Not long after, people noticed Lucas stopped showing up with Sophie Carter. Rumor had it they had a big fight. Sophie cried in the B-wing hallway for over an hour. After that, she started posting cryptic story updates. Vague captions, attention-seeking tone. There were the usual cryptic posts. Don't trust things that seem permanent. Staying with someone who doesn't want to stay only makes you feel smaller. But no one really felt sorry for her anymore. Because someone who forced her way into another person's life with fake charm will, in the end, be consumed by that same fakeness. I didn't care who was heartbroken, who was falling apart. I just felt at peace. One afternoon after class, I happened to walk past the campus basketball court. I saw Lucas Trent sitting alone in the bleachers. The sunlight hit his hair at an angle, making his face look pale and hollow. I didn't avoid him. But I didn't walk toward him either. I just walked past, like we had never known each other at all. Then he called my name, soft, but unmistakably clear. Taylor. I paused for a few seconds, then turned. He walked toward me slowly, no longer with the presence of someone who used to be so proud. His eyes were red. I really was wrong, he said. I'm sorry. I looked at him for a long moment. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel pain. I didn't feel regret. I just said, quietly. Some apologies don't need to be spoken. Because the person you're saying them to doesn't need them anymore. I turned and walked away. He didn't stop me. And I didn't need to walk fast. Because I had truly moved on. The university held its annual Outstanding Student ceremony in the school's largest auditorium. I was one of 3 students called to the stage to receive special recognition from the dean. When my name was announced, the entire room applauded. I walked up in a simple white dress, hair curled and pinned up. The spotlight hit me and everything else seemed to go silent. As if I was the only person in the center of it all. When I turned to bow to the audience, I saw Lucas Trent standing near the back exit. He wasn't sitting with anyone. His eyes met mine, no longer sharp, no longer arrogant. Just full of something unmistakable. Regret. Sophie Carter sat in the third row. Her face pale. She had been a nominee for the award, but was disqualified last minute after a report surfaced about falsified data in her project. I wasn't behind it. But I knew exactly who had been removed from the nominee list last year because of Sophie's quiet manipulations. Karma doesn't need anyone to push it. It always knows when to show up. After the ceremony, Lucas texted me. "I never thought you'd go this far. I regret it all." I didn't reply. I was having dinner with Michael at a quiet restaurant near the lake. He was telling me about his study abroad scholarship offer, and his plan to open his own creative studio. When I mentioned I had been invited to return next semester as a teaching assistant, he wasn't surprised. He just smiled and said, "I knew it. You can do anything." I looked at him. This man who had never inserted himself into my past. Who never asked me to forget anything. He simply arrived. Right when I no longer felt the need to prove myself to anyone. And stayed. When I no longer needed anyone to pull me out of the pain I had already left behind. I used to think that revenge meant making someone hurt as much as they once made me hurt. But now I understand, the best way is letting them realize they no longer have the right to enter your life ever again. I'm not cruel. I've just stopped being naive. At the end of that spring, I boarded a plane for my semester exchange program. The airport was crowded, the sky softly lit with sunlight, and in my heart, nothing was holding me back anymore. Everything here had once been my youth, my heartbreak, my pain, my hope. And the most expensive lesson I ever paid for with my own hands. Lucas Trent didn't come to see me off. I knew he knew the flight schedule, friends had mentioned it. But I didn't expect him to show up. And even if he had, I wouldn't have turned back. Not because I'm arrogant. But because I understand now. When something has truly run its course, going back means nothing. Sophie Carter vanished from all campus activities after the scandal broke. She tried messaging me once. A long, polite, guilt-ridden apology. I never replied. Not because I was angry. But because I had already forgotten. Michael walked me to the security gate. Just before I stepped through, he gently took my hand. "If one day, you feel peaceful enough to start something new. If it's with me, I'll still be here." I nodded. No promises. No rush. But deep down, I knew. If I ever begin again, it'll be with someone who doesn't make me chase them until my voice goes hoarse. Only to still be left without a name. The plane took off. The city below grew smaller, slowly disappearing under the white clouds. I closed my eyes. And the only image that came to mind was of me, a year ago, standing in the rain outside the dorm. Waiting for someone who never came back. I smiled. Light. Free. I waited for you once. But not forever. That's the end of the story. Thank you for watching until the end. Don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next video.